Molecules at just room temperature are moving upwards of hundreds of kilometers per hour. But yet, despite all that chaos and violence, beautiful structures emerge, but those structures can't persist in time. They have to be dynamic, otherwise the system fails. So it has to have this balance of chaos and order at the same time. And I think conveying those ideas through movement was pretty exciting because it conveyed it in a way, I think, that would be new and visceral and people would be able to relate to it. I'm Dave Odde.
And I'm Flink, and I'm collaborating with David on a wonderful project called the Moving Cell Project.
In the Moving Cell Project, we're simulating how cell dynamics evolve by having people act as molecules within the cell.
And we're also trying to find with that interaction how it also can inform art making that then has its voice in Black Label Movement as a dance company.
One of the things I study are microtubules. Practically, microtubules are targets in various types of cancer treatment. They're very dynamic. They actually grow and then shorten, and that switching is from a growing to shortening is a catastrophe. A catastrophe is a normal part of cell dynamics.
For me, the idea of catastrophe is the fact that it is an extreme event, an event where many things are happening quickly. A catastrophe implies a high amount of motion. And when you look at the microtubules in David's research, there is this incredible sense of collapse and fall that actually I think was just a starting point of how do we make that collapse manifest at a human scale.
When you write computer code, you got to sit there, you have to have the exact syntax. If you have a period in the wrong place, it negates everything. You got to get it exactly right, and these codes can wind up being pretty long actually, with many lines of code, and eventually you do it. But it was fairly easy to program Black Label Movement.
David essentially gave us rules. Here's the rules of behavior that I want you to execute. When he flips the coin, you're going to step forward if you get heads and turn right. And if there's a tail, you're going to step backwards and turn left. The movers were very quickly able to manifest those rules, and the random nature with which they need to manifest allowed us to see a lot of these random behaviors very quickly.
In our computer simulations, for every moderately complex system, the output of the simulation is often not anticipated at the outset of the run. That means we can kind of start to sift through these ideas very rapidly with movers and accelerate the discovery process through them.
And to actually discover some fairly insightful moments.
Once they were trained, I could just say, okay, that's the random walk. Now let's add a chemical reaction on top of that. Let's add a bond forming, so now they're going to grab onto each other. So we built it up. Actually, at the beginning of the project, I honestly didn't see how this would necessarily impact my own research. I saw it as a way to maybe more effectively communicate what is going on in scientists' minds. But I soon realized that this actually could help the scientific discussion, not between expert and lay public, but between experts, actually. So we invited in some other experts and tried to have a dialogue. We invited in Dyke Mullins, a biochemist from UC California, San Francisco, and Enrique de la Cruz, also a biochemist from Yale University. And then John Bohannon, our collaborator from Science Magazine, joined us, and the four of us scientists kind of started to have it out on the dance floor through BLM.
David was saying, he could probably do this in a simulation. It would take longer, but once he worked it out, he might be able to get a few things more. At a minimum, this is going to give us an idea of what the trends are, where changes are happening that are worth looking into a little bit more carefully.
Essentially, he's giving his dancers algorithms to follow, little recipes. And that's essentially how molecules work. They don't have some grand plan, they're just following local rules. And out of that following of rules by thousands and thousands of players, order emerges, and us.
We could put these scientists inside the activity, and they could be inside of their own experiment, which is, I think, a fairly transformative opportunity.
I could push back on Enrique and say, no, I think it should be like this. And Dyke could say, no, I think it's like this. And we could engage in that dialogue, and we just tell the movers, do it like this. And then we're off and running, and we're having that dialogue. And we might see things like, gosh, I didn't think it would happen that way. And actually, in this particular case of working with the other scientists, the particular ideas we explored those ideas with Carl's company. And I now, based on the results we got, I now have an undergraduate biomedical engineering student working further to actually do the computer simulations to follow up and test those ideas more rigorously. But up front, rapid prototyping is a really good potential use for dance.
And John Bohannon, our collaborator, coined the phrase body storming.
We oftentimes do brainstorming. We sit around and think, well, what if we got up and not only thought, but started moving too and acting out our ideas? It forces you to be more concrete and specific in your ideas. And so that's what we came to call body storming. If you guys are proteins, which I think is what I was thinking of, in between you is lots and lots of water and other stuff. And those guys are like, fast. You know what I mean? I picture, in my head, I hear like just loud music and, like you were saying, Carl, the water just flying everywhere.
Initially, we thought that what we wanted to do is have the movers in the company running into each other at high speed, and how would we make that happen? So we were looking at creating high-impact suits. We started moving away from that just from the fact that when we put on various prototype suits, we found that the movers' range and agility was deeply affected. And so we started looking at how could we be hitting each other and colliding with each other in safe ways that would allow us to represent some of these scientific ideas that David's working with. And that's kind of one of the things that I think that was the germ that started heading me towards the creation of this quartet called HIT. I saw a quartet of 4 people who are struggling to try to figure out how to remain as a community, as in many ways they express themselves rather than through conversation, but through the actual physical act of hitting one another. And when you take the rules off of that world, suddenly you have this ballistic environment that explores the intensity of emotions brought to the fore, the things that are hidden underneath. I think for us, it's very exciting to be doing something that seems to resonate with many people. But I think one of the things that's made this collaborative particularly dynamic is the fact we've kind of stayed committed to the idea that it's exciting for us. We're not seeing it as now a research node in what we do. We're seeing it as, well, are we excited about what we're doing? Let's keep doing it.
Minnesota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.